Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and I do get out of my basement every once in a while and hit the road to cover events in person. And last week I went out to New York City to cover an event from a company called Pepcom, where they bring a bunch of electronics brands into a single room, and I can very quickly meet the companies and see what they have to offer. And if you go in the video description, you will see my link to the dispatch video that I shot from that event, where we saw about 16 different items. And I've been adjusting my workflow for these events over the years. Last year I was using a GoPro, but this year I thought I would try something different and use my iPhone. And I've got the whole setup here kind of discombobulated, and I'm going to reassemble it and talk about the workflow that I executed on this trip. It's not perfect, but it actually worked better than I thought it would. And I know a lot of you were interested in seeing what I was using while out in New York. So we're going to get to that in just a second, but I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, that just about everything here I paid for with my own funds, although a couple of things came in from Sennheiser free of charge. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own. No one is paying for this review, nor has anyone reviewed or approved what you're about to see before it was uploaded. So let's get into it now and see how I got my rig working on the road. Now, of course, I'm using an iPhone 15 Pro here. And what I like about using a phone versus the GoPro is that you have many more lens choices. So of course the iPhone has an ultra wide, a standard lens, and then now a telephoto lens that does a 5x, at least on the Pro phone here. And what I've set up here will largely work with just about any phone that has a USB Type-C port. So if you don't have an iPhone, but you have a Samsung or a Google Pixel or something, this should probably work pretty much the same with the same equipment here. But I do prefer the video quality on the phones. In particular, the GoPro isn't very good at getting in close to things for fine detail. And on the iPhone at least, and I think on some of the other Android phones that are in the flagship category, you can even get into macro kind of photography where you can really show very small details. And that's a huge advantage of a phone versus a GoPro. The phone actually has decent stabilization, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So as you saw from the video, it didn't look all that bad, even though we were using a phone that's designed to do other things beyond its camera. Now, we'll start off with the first component here, which is this Manfrotto little tripod, but it also works well as a handle. And if you want to turn it into a tripod, you just extend out the legs here. We've been actually using this with my regular camcorder that we take with us for the CES trips. And Jake, who helps us out here on the channel, prefers to use the camera with the handle because it gives him a better grip. And this, of course, works really well for the phone arrangement. And if you can get it up at the right level, propped up on something, you can pretty much mount it on a tripod here and work with it that way. Now, what I have connected to the phone is this little thing. This is called the GLIF. I love this. This is probably one of the best phone mounts that I've ever used. And it's a piece of plastic here, but it's really nicely constructed plastic. Unfortunately, the company that makes it is currently back ordered. They're not all that expensive. I think they're under $30. And I've had this now for a number of years, and it is rock solid. It works with large phones and small phones. And what I do here is just put my phone in place, and then you snap in the clip here in the back, and it doesn't go anywhere. It is super solid here, as you can see. It gets a really nice, tight grip. Yet it's really easy to get the phone out if you need to take a call or put some notes in or switch phones for that matter. It's a really, really good phone clip. And it's a shame it's out of stock right now because this is like the only phone clip that I will use anymore. It's just that good. Generally, the phone goes in pretty straight here. Sometimes you get it a little off center and it gets a little wacky, but generally it works quite well for that. Now, what I like about the GLIF is that it has two tripod-sized mounts on it that are freed up. One of them, of course, is screwed into the tripod here, but I've got one on the side and I've got one on the top. And so on the top, I have this little light. This is a light panels light. I bought this probably way back in 2007 or 2008, right when I was starting to play around with making my own content. And this light came out when there were no other LED panels on the market. And what I liked about it was that it was super bright, yet very small, and runs on AA batteries. In fact, I run my nickel metal hydride batteries in here that are rechargeable. And this light has served me well over the years. It is very lightweight. I'm sure there are other lights out there now that would work just as well. And what I've got it connected on here is a cold shoe mount, and I have two of these. I have this one kind of in place just because it's hard to get them to face in the right direction. But these kind of screw into a tripod mount and give you a cold shoe. So I'm going to screw the other one in here on the side, and that's where our microphone is going to go. So we'll get that kind of situated here. Now, as far as the microphone is concerned, and you've seen me use this quite often over the years, this is a Sennheiser AVX handheld mic. Now, I love the Sennheiser AVX system. This is kind of an expensive pro-level kind of device, but what I like about them is that they are rock solid. I have never, ever had this fail on me out in the field. And I've been to CES, I've been to very congested areas. It is very good at managing its frequencies automatically. In fact, it transmits on two simultaneously, and if one starts to go south, it immediately switches over to the backup frequency and finds another one. I think these run on like old cordless phone frequencies. I want to say it's like 700 megahertz or something, so it's not going to get a lot of interference with Wi-Fi or Bluetooth signals. So if you're in a busy environment, chances are this thing is going to work just fine. There are some limitations to it, of course, the price being one of them. I think for a kit, it's about $800 to $1,200, depending on which kit that you get. Now, I will tell you in full disclosure that one of these kits came in free of charge through the Amazon Vine program. The second kit I have, I purchased with my own funds because it was so good. That includes the stick microphone here. And Sennheiser also sent me along their cardioid head for this microphone. So it comes with an omnidirectional head, but the cardioid head is what I use out in these trade show environments because they are incredibly noisy. And what's nice about this cardioid head is that it picks up only from the top. And you got to hold the mic kind of close to your face, but when you do that, you're not hearing any of the surrounding noise or just a little bit of it, and you come through very, very, very clearly. So if you go back and watch the video that I did, you'll hear just how clean it sounds, even though it is in a very busy environment. Now, you probably have seen microphone kits from DJI, like the one I reviewed a few months ago. Those receivers typically allow you to have two mics coming in at the same time. Unfortunately, Sennheiser is one to a customer. So if I wanted to add a second mic to the mix here, that's going to be a bit challenging. I'd have to find some kind of mixer or something like that. But for my one-man band kind of activities, this works just fine. But you will note that we have an XLR connector here, and the Sennheiser kit comes with an XLR to a 1/8 inch headphone jack, essentially. So once you plug this in, you get this coming out. And what this is called a TRRS connector, and it's got two of those little black insulators there to kind of indicate what it is. And of course, the iPhone doesn't have any kind of headphone jack anymore. So to bridge the gap, I bought this Anker USB-C to headphone adapter. And this is actually a very good one. I found that there's a lot of these adapters out there, and most of them are junk, and many of them didn't work at all when I tried to get them working. This one seems to work the best out of all the other ones that I have tested, and I'll put a link to this in the video description. The problem is that the connection here is TRRS because it incorporates a microphone and stereo headphones, whereas this connector here is just for a microphone. So, in order to make this work, you have to get another adapter. This is a TRRS to TRS adapter, and this part plugs into the TRRS adapter on the Anker thing here, and then I plug the mic into this, and then all of this plugs into the phone. Now, prior to the iPhone 15 Pro, which is what I have here, I had a iPhone 14 Pro, and that of course had the Lightning adapter. And the reason why I didn't use this last year with the iPhone 14 is that I needed another adapter to go from USB-C to Lightning, and I figured that was just too many points of failure. So we've reduced the points of failure by one here, and that's how I have things connected. And then what I typically do is screw that other cold shoe adapter in there, and then we just slide in the microphone into that. I just have to keep the cables kind of tucked away a little bit. I've got to come up with a better way of doing that. And then we are pretty much good to go here. So this is what the rig looks like when it's up and running, and it's not all that heavy. I've got the light pointed here in the wrong direction, so I'll flip it around real quick. And the big struggle with the iPhone right now is the fact that it doesn't transition very well from when I go to a shot of me to something else in the scene. And I can show you right now, just on this overlay, what it looked like when I transitioned from my face to showing other things. It was a little rocky when I did that. The GoPro handles that much better, and I think it's probably a move that the GoPro anticipates versus the iPhone, which doesn't typically go from, this to that. So it's not as elegant of a switch. And I just may have to work on the wrist a little bit to get it to that point, but it seems to be the only issue that I really ran into with it. Otherwise, the stabilization was rock solid. I shot most of it on the standard mode, which seemed to work pretty well. And I did occasionally use the wide-angle lens too, and that seemed to hold itself pretty steady too. And this has optical stabilization, I think, on all 3 lenses. Now, I used the regular iPhone camera app for all the stuff that you saw. And if you do plug in a USB audio source, it will automatically switch over to that source to grab its audio. But there are no audio monitoring meters on the official app here. So you can, of course, adjust the focus and everything, but you don't know what your audio levels are. So I do need to find a third-party app that might be able to provide that, but also giving me all the features of the iPhone app, including the ability to switch cameras on the fly even when I'm recording. So that's something I would like to see. Another factor is that these rear cameras, of course, are better than the front-facing camera. And if I am pointing the camera at myself like this, as you can see, there's no screen here on the back of the phone to see what's going on. So on the GoPro, there is a little monitor on the front where I can at least get the shot framed. Here, I've got to take a best guess, and I was finding I was giving myself a little too much headroom, so we did crop and zoom a little bit on some of the clips that you saw in the video. And one of the things that I'm going to be looking for next, if I continue on this path, is maybe getting a little USB-C hub and finding some display, a small one perhaps, that I can mount somewhere on this rig, or maybe have to get a bigger rig for it, so that I could see what the camera is seeing while I am shooting. Of course, an alternative is I could just have the front-facing camera on me when I do my stuff and then cut and go to something else. But I like the idea of being able to smoothly go from one thing back to me without having to do a cut first, because that's one of the luxuries you have with the GoPro, in that you can kind of see everything no matter which side of the camera you're looking at. Now, as far as the recording format is concerned, I just went with the standard HEVC video and recorded them onto the iPhone itself. I have a 256 gigabyte iPhone. All of the footage I collected was maybe 10 or 12 gigabytes. It was quite small in size. And one of the nice advantages now of the USB Type-C was that I could export those clips a lot faster than it used to take over the USB 2.0 Lightning. So that was pretty quick to get it out of there. Now, if I use the USB-C hub, I could attach external storage and shoot ProRes, but typically my reports from the field are not works of art. The HEVC video is more than adequate for the purpose of what I am doing out there, but it is an option if I wanted to do something with higher quality in the future. But again, the HEVC stuff looked just fine. Now, one last thing, and that is the battery performance. The event the other night started around 5 p.m. and I was wrapped up probably about 7:30 p.m. or so about 2.5 hours. And I still had about 80%, 75% or so left in the tank. So the battery here held up pretty well. Now, note that this is a new iPhone, and it's not an iPhone that's been used for a year, so we'll see how well the battery is at that point. But one of the things that I carry around with me is this large Anker battery pack that I reviewed a little while back. And what I like about this one is that it's got the AC output, so I could charge some of my other devices with it, but it also has a pretty fast USB-C output here. I think it'll do 40 watts of charging, so I could pump a bunch of power into the phone pretty quickly if needed. And there's plenty of reserve on this thing. I think this is a 100 watt-hour battery or close to that. So lots of extra power, although it's a little on the heavier side. It's not very thick. It's about the size of a small hardcover book. So it fits quite nicely in my bag, and it's nice to have the peace of mind with this power that I can carry around with me. So that's pretty much how I did it. I would love to get some feedback from all of you as to maybe some things that I should consider to improve this. What I like about the GLIF is how good it is, but it only has essentially 2 mount points that I can make use of. I could, of course, attach more things and make this more of a monstrosity, but I would love to hear if some of you have your own rig strategies for phones that I might want to consider with this setup here, because it might be easier to walk around with it. I prefer require a one-armed effort here, because I need my other hand free for the microphone. So this is what I look like when I'm walking around. And I have all the PR people kind of show the product out for me while I'm at their table, which they're happy to do. So I really can't work with one of those cages that requires 2 arms because I need one of them freed up for the mic here. So let me know what you thought, and maybe I'll make some adjustments for the next trip that we go on. At CES, Jake usually comes with me, so we use the larger camcorder. I still think that makes sense for that kind of environment, but for just me, a one-person operation for these quicker trips, I think this works out quite well. That's going to do it for this one. Until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by the Lon.TV supporters, including gold-level supporters Brian Parker, Chris Allegretta, Hot Sauce and Video Games, Logic KGR, Tom Albrecht, and Amda Brown. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to lon.tv/support to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit lon.tv/s.